All right, let's jump right in with a question that's actually kind of huge. What is the real power of your imagination? I mean, really. Today, we're going to dig into this amazing philosophical puzzle that really gets to the core of how we think about reality itself. So, here's the big idea for today. If you can clearly, vividly picture something in your head, does that automatically mean it's possible in the real world? I mean, it kind of feels like it should, right? But oh man, as you're about to see, this seemingly simple idea has sparked some major debates among philosophers for literally centuries. Okay, so to get our heads around this, let's talk about the most convincing kind of proof you can get. It's called proof by exhibition. Think about it this way. If I told you I could run 100 meters in under 13 seconds, I could try to convince you with spreadsheets and charts, or I could just, go out and do it right in front of you. That's exhibition. You see it, you believe it. End of story. Well, what's cool is that our imagination can work in a similar way. It's like a mental exhibition. You don't need to grab a piece of paper to figure out if two circles can intersect, right? You just picture it in your head. Boom. You've just exhibited it in your mind, and you know it's possible. But here's the big question. Does that little mental trick hold up when we start thinking about much, much bigger ideas? And to answer that, we've got to get really clear on what we even mean by possible. You might think it's a simple word, but it's actually super slippery. Philosophers have broken it down into 4 different, let's call them flavors of possibility. And trust me, getting these 4 flavors down is the key to unlocking this whole thing. First up, we've got physical possibility. This one's the easiest to grasp. It's all about whether something follows the laws of physics in our universe. Can a person fly just by flapping their arms? Nope. Physically impossible. Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, next on the list is metaphysical possibility. This one's a little weirder. It's about the very essence or identity of a thing. So, for example, could a human being be made entirely of cheese? And the answer is no. Not because of physics. Maybe you could build a cheese statue, but because being made of flesh and bone is part of what it means to be a human. If it were made of cheese, it just wouldn't be a human anymore. It'd be, well, a cheese person, which is something else entirely. Then there's logical possibility. Now, this is the widest, most open category of them all. Basically, something is logically possible as long as it doesn't break the rules of logic itself, as long as it's not a straight-up contradiction. So, could a planet be made of solid diamond? Why not? There's no contradiction in that idea. But could you have a 4-sided triangle? No way. The very definition of a triangle is that it has 3 sides. A 4-sided triangle is a logical impossibility. And last but not least, we have experiential possibility. This one is all about what you can imagine happening from your own point of view. Think about your dreams. You can fly, right? Or you can daydream about jumping over a building. We know that's physically impossible, but from inside your own head, from your first-person experience, you can picture it happening as clear as day. All right, so now we have our toolkit, 4 different kinds of possible. Let's put it to work and see how philosophers use this whole idea of conceivability to tackle one of the biggest questions there is. What exactly is the mind? And that brings us to the one and only René Descartes and his really famous thought experiment. He sat down and thought, hey, I can clearly and distinctly imagine my mind, my consciousness, my sense of self, just floating around, existing without my body at all. He could picture himself as just a pure thinking thing, with no arms, no legs, no physical form. Now, for Descartes, this wasn't just some fun little daydream. His whole argument was built on the idea of an all-powerful God. He figured, if something isn't a logical contradiction, then God could make it happen. So his logic went something like this. If I can imagine my mind without my body, then it must be possible for them to be separate. And hey, if they can be separate, that must mean they aren't the same thing. They must be 2 totally different substances. Okay, let's jump forward in time to a more modern take on this puzzle. From the philosopher David Chalmers, he wants you to imagine something pretty creepy. Picture someone who looks exactly like you. They walk like you, they talk like you, their brain is physically identical to yours down to the last atom. But here's the twist. On the inside, there's nothing going on. No thoughts, no feelings, no inner world. The lights are on, but nobody's home. This spooky creature is what's known as a philosophical zombie, or a P-zombie. And as you can see here, it's a perfect copy on the outside. Same body, same behavior, but it's missing that one thing that makes you, consciousness. That inner feeling of what it's like to see red or taste chocolate, what philosophers call qualia. And Chalmers' big point is that since we can even imagine a pea zombie, that suggests that consciousness must be something extra, something more than just the physical stuff of our brains. So, this link between what we can imagine and what's actually possible seems like a super powerful tool for philosophers, right? Well, it's not that simple. In fact, this is where things start to get a little messy, and the whole argument begins to run into some serious problems. Let's hit the most obvious issue first. Remember that experiential possibility we talked about? I can sit here right now and perfectly imagine myself jumping clean over a mountain. I can see it, I can feel it in my mind's eye. But we all know that is absolutely 100% physically impossible. So right off the bat, we know our imagination doesn't really care about the laws of physics. Okay, now for a trickier problem. Let's think about water. Science has taught us that the fundamental identity of water, its metaphysical essence, what makes it water, is its chemical makeup, H2O. That's not just a recipe. It's what water literally is. So could you imagine a clear liquid that looks and feels just like water, but it's made of something totally different, like C20 or something? Yeah, you totally can. But here's the million-dollar question. Are you imagining water being C20? And the answer philosophers give is no. You're just imagining a different liquid that happens to look like water. You can't imagine water itself being anything other than H2O, because that would violate its very essence. And this idea hits Descartes' argument right where it hurts. When Descartes imagines his mind floating around without his body, how does he know that floating mind is still him? I mean, what if your personal identity, the thing that makes you you, is fundamentally tangled up with your physical brain and body? Maybe what he's imagining isn't himself without a body, but just some other disembodied mind that isn't him at all. Maybe it's impossible to conceive of yourself without a body. So where does that leave us? Is this whole conceivability thing just useless? Is our imagination a terrible guide to reality? Well, no, not at all. The modern view is actually way more balanced and, honestly, a lot more useful. There's a philosopher named Scott Sturgeon who I think nails it. He says that being able to conceive of something gives us a reason to believe it might be possible. It's a good starting point. But, and this is the most important word here, that reason is defeasible. Defeasible is just a fancy way of saying it can be proven wrong. It's not ironclad proof, it's evidence, sure, but it's evidence that can be overturned by a better argument or a new discovery. So let's just break that down nice and simple. First, imagining something is a good starting point, but it's not the finish line. It's not final proof. Second, it gives us what we call defeasible evidence, evidence that can be challenged. Third, and this is key, that evidence can be defeated by better arguments, like solid scientific facts or finding a contradiction you missed. And finally, what this is really good for is showing us what ideas we shouldn't just dismiss out of hand. It helps us see what's on the table for discussion. So, at the end of the day, think of conceivability as a guide, not a guarantee. It's a fantastic tool for exploring the absolute limits of what could be real, for pushing our own boundaries. But you've got to use it with care and always check your ideas against logic and what we know about the world. And that leaves me with one final question for you to chew on. What does your imagination tell you is possible? Thanks for tuning in.